All right, everybody drunk? Everybody good?
Working on it.
All right. All right, here we go. Welcome to the second installment of the Tesla Community Forum on my channel, where I take my community on Patreon and the folks that join the YouTube channel, and we sit down and discuss the topics that the community wants to talk about. The first one was super successful. It was 5 of us in total, I believe, and it seemed to be a very popular thing that we did. And today we have a returning guest from the previous week, and we also have 2 new guests for this community. So for this community panel, so I'm very excited to get this kicked off with this awesome crew. What we'll do real quick, we'll go around the horn, we'll give quick introductions, and then we'll get started with the topic that the community wants to talk about. So Rodman, I'll let you go first since you've been here with us before. Give us a quick intro, and then we'll take it from there.
All right, thanks. I'm Rodman Lau. Like last time, I was a former software engineer, turned into a full-time long-term investor. Tesla is my big thing, and it's been great. So how about you, Mike?
I'm Mike. So I wasn't listening to anything you said.
It's all good.
I was just thinking what I would say. So I started getting into Tesla like right before the Cybertruck thing happened, the reveal. It was through a Wait But Why post.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it was new at the time, but I liked that website. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat because I'm nervous.
It's all good. It's all good.
But anyway, it'll go away. But yeah, so I've been following Tesla like adamantly ever since reading about that, like why Tesla's the future or whatever the post was called, and it was just really good. I don't know, I can't, like, I don't know why it's so like interesting to me, but like yeah. Anyway.
And you're also a FSD driver, right? FSD beta driver.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm a beta driver, and I'm also doing my own like test routes, and doing like kind of a more in-depth rating system. I'm not just counting like the number of interventions and disengagements, but I'm also like rating like how severe the mistakes were. And even if I didn't like do anything, like I didn't disengage or anything, I still will give it a bad rating if it like makes you feel uncomfortable or does something awkward. But yeah, what else? Oh yeah, and then for work I do like spreadsheet stuff, like data analysis. Yeah, so I've been doing some of that.
Are you an investor as well, Mike?
Yeah.
How long have you been invested for?
As soon as I could afford to invest, I did. It wasn't very long ago though.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And then Hans, we'll let you go last here, but not least. Last but not least. And then if you don't mind, after you give us your introduction, kick us off with the first topic of today.
Cool. So yeah, my name is Hans Nelson. I got my degree in mechanical engineering, graduated in 2010. And then I did a little bit of work in manufacturing after that. And then I went back and worked on a master's degree for a little bit, decided that wasn't the direction I wanted to go long term. I was trying to get away from management and then ended up in management anyways. But I brought up the college experience because I had one of my classmates from, actually he was one of the key guys on my senior design team. His name was Daniel Goldman, and he was a Californian, and he was early in the Model 3 lineup. He had put his deposit down and got it kind of early on. And that was one of the first things that kind of got it on my radar. And then I had another classmate that I went to graduate school who went off and worked at SpaceX. So those were kind of my introductions to Elon and SpaceX and Tesla. So I started following it probably 2014, 2015, a little bit. And I had started investing in about 2012. I had a little bit of a rollover IRA that I wanted to go ahead and start self-managing. And so I was kind of doing some of these things all in parallel, and took notice of how the Model 3 ramp was going. I didn't really feel super comfortable investing early on. I didn't know anything about Tesla Motors Forum. Watching all of Dave Lee's stuff, I feel like I missed out. I wish I had discovered that earlier on. And then, so I think I bought my first shares in 2017. I bought 5, just a little bit of play money. I had kind of, my strategy when I first started out, just dipping my toes in the water of investing, was very oriented around Dave Ramsey's recommendations of mutual funds and diversification. And I just watched my portfolio do a bunch of nothing from 2012 until about 2015 or 16. And I was like, man, I really want to try kind of broadening my horizons. And it's like, I have no money in here anyway, so if I lose it all, it's not a big deal. And so I started playing with some single stocks, bought Google and Apple back at that time. I ended up getting a pretty quick double on my Google. And that was like the first sniff of crack that took me down the rabbit hole of single stock investing. And so I just started out with a little bitty position in Tesla. I mean, it was maybe 15, 20% of my portfolio. And then once I was invested in it, I started following it like crazy, watching pretty much every Elon interview that I could get my hands on. And super impressed with his ability not only to execute, but just think from first principles, solve problems, do things that everyone else said was impossible. I loved the Everyday Astronaut interview that just dropped, where they went up the tower the other day and Elon said that at SpaceX, our specialty is turning things from impossible into late. So I think that's like such a perfect encapsulation of what Elon is capable of doing. And now I'm at a point where I'm like 95% Tesla.
Nice. That's awesome, man. Thank you for that. All right, kick us off with your topic, and then we'll take it from there.
Cool. So I think, long-term valuation wise, one of the biggest keys to Tesla is going to be, what does the rollout of Robotaxi look like? Is that something that's possible, probable? Kind of what are the probabilities that we want to assign to that? And then what are timelines? So I've been thinking a lot about this recently, and just really, so, if we assume that Elon is somewhat correct and we can achieve full FSD beta wide release to the US sometime between the end of this year and the end of next year, then I've really been trying to think through, okay, so what does it look like from that point to actual operational robo-taxis? There's so many variations of ways that could progress. I just wanted to think through that, and I have some thoughts, but I'm really curious to see what everyone else foresees that looking like. And both, you could attack it from any way, like technologically, when do we get robotaxi functionality, from the market, from regulatory standpoint,
You want to take a stab, Mike?
Yeah. So first thing that comes to mind are some of the common things people say, like, how will it close the doors if someone forgets to close the door? Or like, what happens if someone barfs in it or something? It's like, well, I don't know. Like, how does it, like, okay, when there's a driver there, obviously the driver can say, hey, you forgot to close the door. But then the car has speakers, so the car can also talk potentially. And then also, like, you can accelerate the car to close the doors. I don't know. But then, and if someone like makes a mess in the car, well, Tesla knows who was in the car last, and the next person will notice the mess and report it, right? And then that car will disappear, and new car will pull up, and the other person will probably be fined some amount, some amount that's already pre-agreed upon, So I don't know, all these little things, like who will clean it and who will charge it, and it's like these are small things compared to the big problem, which is the software. As far as software goes, I don't think it's impossible. I mean, it's definitely not physically impossible for software to drive a car. Our brains are kind of a software, and they drive cars okay. And FSD beta is improving still. So yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say that, like, if you've looked at the videos of 10.11 and 10.12, well, even just going back before that, right? So like everything from like last October to like maybe 3 months ago was like, a lot of people getting kind of frustrated that it wasn't progressing. And then, they make one, like then 1011 comes out and like everyone's like suddenly back on board, there's just like a lot more videos popping up on YouTube, and just the FSD drives are like, just the amount of content around it is just shooting through the roof. And the first day I looked at for 10.12 videos on FSD, like the videos, like the titles were like, it's amazing, it's great. I mean, it was hard to find videos that weren't superlative of it. Of course, I've watched videos of like, especially like downtown drives and stuff. There's ones where, like it's going down a one-way street the wrong way, and you're just like, but I mean, that's a bad look. But I think overall you can definitely start to see that, like, the things that are important where they're trying to tackle those problems, that it's solving those problems, it's getting towards where they want to go. Like getting those left turns, which is arguably one of the most difficult problems in the whole self-driving task. I mean, like if it's able to tackle that, I feel like a lot of the other problems are going to get solved. Like, like someone's complaining, oh, it's pulled up too far, or it's like not inching forward enough. I feel like those things are like relatively simple compared to like figuring out where there's oncoming traffic and when it's time to get into the median and like to accelerate out of that. Like doing that safely, that's so challenging. And then like all the other stuff, it's like let them focus on the difficult stuff, and then like the easy stuff can like kind of get solved later. So I feel like, I mean, I understand, because like as a driver of FSD beta, like I'm not one, but like as a driver, if I would want it to be perfect, because I want FSD beta to come out, right? But like you also have to understand that they can't solve all the problems at once, and they're focusing on like the biggest challenges I think that they would have. I mean, I'm not sure because I don't work there, but
Can I
I mean,
say,
what do you guys think? Yeah.
Like I definitely, if I don't have an insight into obviously what the Tesla team's thinking inside, but I would be thinking, look, we just want to make sure there's no crashes, so like comfort and like perfection about like little things, or like obvious mistakes the driver will fix, and it has ample time to fix, as long as it's not like last second boom, right into head on traffic, or those kind of serious mistakes that are really hard to avoid. As long as they focus on those and prioritize on those, I think it's fine. I feel really safe when I'm driving FSD beta. I try to use it almost all the time. There's like a couple little spots where I know it doesn't do as well as I like it to, and I just kind of drive that little part. But I like 90% of my drive or more is on FSD beta, and I find it really relaxing, and I feel safer with it on. Because it's like having two sets of eyes on the road, and it also helps me be more patient, because it's patient. It doesn't try to like, oh, there's a little gap, I'm gonna go. It'll wait until a nice gap in traffic to go and things like that. So I really like it. But yeah, I agree with what you said there.
I think the most interesting thing about the whole full self-driving thing is how different it is versus a human driver, because safety is the number one priority, right? So, which is weird, because I've been thinking about this a lot. It's like, okay, when people drive, when you're in a car with somebody, okay, and this is maybe I'm projecting the fact that I'm a bad driver, but let me just walk through this logic, okay? That patience word is so interesting, because that's 100% right. And a lot of times when you're in a full self-driving beta car, when the car is doing something that is safe, I look at it as what are you doing? Like, what are you waiting for? But it's literally just creeping to make sure that it's not going to hit something. Whereas if I'm going to go through that intersection, I'm like, good enough, I'm going to go. Right? So it's always prioritizing safety. What's going to be really interesting within that context, as as it's completed and let's say level 4 is achieved this year and we start going into, okay, what does adoption look like? I think there's going to be a curve of people. Like I'm literally trying to role play through this. Okay, so say by some miracle, or who knows, maybe it is possible. I personally think this is actually a thing. But like say by December, Elon and Tesla say, okay, full self-driving, it's ready. It's ready for broad release to everybody who has full self-driving beta. Or has purchased full self-driving, here you go. Now, every single full self-driving car can now have full self-driving. Say in the United States, like regulatory depending. So let's remove Europe, let's remove China and anywhere else. The United States, everybody gets full self-driving beta. Cool. Everybody there is going to get a software suite that is not going to drive exactly like a human, but it's going to be much safer than a human. And within the context of getting you from point A to point B, it's going to be much cheaper than a human. Okay. So there's going to be a learning curve, I believe, with the population that's going to be like, okay, so I know that Tesla. Okay, and then within that context, also assume that a robotaxi capability will also be released within a few months after that. So like they're like, okay, cool. Now we can start doing robotaxi stuff in say key cities like LA, Austin, I don't know, Miami. Those are the 3 that they get launched. Weather is usually very good in those 3 markets. We don't have to worry about snow. We're good. It gets released. Then what's going to end up happening is in those markets, the people that experience full self-driving beta might have like a thing where they're like, okay, so this car's driving me around, but it's like doing so in a very safe manner. Like it's not being super aggressive. It's different from any other driver you would have. But you start to notice that, oh my God, I paid $10 to go from downtown Miami to my house 40 minutes away. Like that's killer. You know, and I think that's the equation that's going to start kicking in, is that I think the hesitancy that people have from a behavioral problem will go away, because that's a lot of what's happening right now. People are like, man, this thing drives weird sometimes. I think that will exist for a really long time because the car's always optimizing safety, but then the cost equation will kick in and people will be like, wow, this is way cheaper than anything else I can purchase. And that's going to be the driving factor for full self-driving in the future, in my opinion. Okay, so like people are going to ignore the quirkiness and going to be like, dude, I don't have to pay barely anything to get to where I want to go. And then that's going to, in the end, when people make decisions, cost ultimately is the biggest driver. And so if Tesla's offering the solution that's cheaper than anything else, in my opinion, it's going to be an complete success. I mean, it's going to completely transform everything. But it's not until that cost equation happens and its broad availability kicks in as well. So those are my thoughts. I don't know if that helps Hans or anybody else, but I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest caveats I would throw in there is just that there's kind of an assumption there that the wide release of FSD beta and Robotaxi are 2 things that can happen relatively closely together. And that's one of the areas that I have the biggest amount of questions, and I can make a bull case on why that should happen quickly, and I can make a bear case on why that might take 2 years. Yeah. Based on the evidence that we can see in the drives and just the capability of the product, the fact that this is a core focus of, not only just the smartest people at Tesla, but literally probably some of the smartest people in the world between Elon and the FSD team. You can see that they're constantly coming up with creative solutions to solve whatever the next problem is. And I have pretty much full confidence that they'll be able to get there eventually. Yeah, that's where kind of my questions are, because, there's a pretty big gap. I think you were referencing earlier, Rodman, the Rob Mauer's like downtown drive in Milwaukee when he was going up the one-way street the wrong way. And there's a lot of like little bitty nuance type things that, yeah, they're not a big deal. They're for the most part not like, yes, he was going the wrong way down the street, but there was no immediate safety danger in that specific instance. It's not doing anything crazy. But the gap between being way safer than a human when you have FSD beta plus a human driver to intervene, and then being completely independent, not needing any input from a human in order to provide, we're talking about Robotaxi is a service that needs to, in order to meet Elon's quality standards of service to a customer, it's going to need really exceptional performance, and it's going to need to not get confused in a lot of the ways that you do see it getting confused. And not that, those aren't solvable problems, but there's just so many little problems that are all different. And so that's my question. And so like on the bear case, what I could definitely see is that every single one of those nines in the march of nines towards both safety and performance, not just, you might be able to get a bunch of nines of safety in, or a bunch of nines in safety, but then your performance, as far as how many times does it need a human to intervene in order to get the Robotaxi to provide good service to the customer, that's kind of a different dimension. And so, having to go through a cycle, like I'm almost thinking about each of those as possibly being its own local maximum. That, okay, we're gonna, like, today we have to solve getting confused about one-way streets. And then tomorrow we have to solve, what do I do when I run into an unexpected part of the map where all of a sudden I'm trapped and I can't get out. And you have to solve each one of those problems. And then those problems are going to be different for literally every geography. So like the US is going to be its own beast. To a certain degree, each major metropolitan area is going to be its own beast. India is going to be a completely whole different mess. Europe is going to be its thing. Africa is going to be its thing. So each one of those things just like extends the length of time that it takes in order for this to be maybe a internationally possible service. But, on the flip side, like the bull case is they could totally dedicate a small team and start in Chandler, Arizona and San Francisco and go head to head with Waymo. And like, we're going to just start providing the service in a very geo-fenced area. Robotaxi will be not geo-fenced, or not Robotaxi, sorry, FSD beta will be not geo-fenced. Any customer who has the car can totally drive wherever they want. But as far as Robotaxi functionality, we're going to geo-fence this into an area. We're going to iron out all the kinks. And then we're going to start tackling geography by geography as we expand Robotaxi. I think either one of those scenarios is completely possible, but they definitely pose different scenarios for how the market will perceive the future of the company and assign value to Tesla.
Yeah, I think you're like trying to assign a value is probably one of the most difficult things that like anyone could try to do right now. Like Wall Street, they barely, or like there's just so few people that will even touch it, right? Like Pierre Farragut, like he hasn't, like he's like, he'll say he doesn't really know, and no one knows, right? And I think the only people who really know or have a better inkling of what's going to happen is Tesla, and so we can only take what they've said. And this idea that they're going to build, instead of the $25,000 car, what I like to call, the Model Q, it's not going to, replacing that with like some other car that's purpose built for Robotaxi. That just makes the most sense. And, if Elon sees that this is coming, like there's no reason to believe that he's not putting the resources necessary behind to get that in place. He says, it's going to be done this year. So he's probably planning to get a car out within that year, 2 years at most, and maybe, I don't know. It's hard to figure out where they would like actually create it and like where that would be manufactured and stuff. But I think Austin is probably the likely place that would happen.
Yeah, but I think there's also, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think you're muted, Mike.
I was muted. So you said, Farz, that you think cost will be the thing that kind of gets people on board, being more patient with the way the car drives. But I think also, well, if you're an owner of the car, I don't I don't know if cost is really a factor, right? Because you can sit in the driver's seat and take over whenever you want. If it's being too patient and you're feeling impatient, you're in a hurry, you take over, and there's no cost associated with that, unless maybe you have Tesla insurance and you get some kind of discount for letting the car drive, like when it's at the point where it's constantly driving better than humans are, and it knows that when you do take over, you take very risky maneuvers, and so it would say like it maybe penalize or reward kind of letting the car, maybe sitting in the passenger seat and just letting the car be a robotaxi for you as the owner or something. Like, I don't know. Maybe that happens right before robotaxis happen. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's also like a context thing too, because what you're speaking about is for everybody who owns, like when I think full self-driving, I always think about it, it's synonymous with the robotaxi network where everyone has access to the tech. I'm not thinking about it necessarily from a context of the owners that buy full self-driving. I'm thinking robotaxi network. What is the thing that's actually going to take Tesla's valuation to 10x from today, or 100x, God knows where it could be, right? It's the fact that everybody has access to experience full self-driving, and that would be the robotaxi network, right? So I always think about within that context for full self-driving. I think the segment of people who are buying Teslas to have full self-driving as a feature, I think that is a very, very, very small percentage of what the actual value of robotaxi is, which is the entire fleet becoming basically an Uber replacement. Okay, and then if I think about it from that point, and I try to contextualize, okay, like how likely is it, like how fast can the speed of the robotaxi network coming online, what does that mean? I keep going back to the fact that Tesla has, and again, I'm trying to be as non-biased as possible because I'm probably the most biased person. I probably have the most biased brain just because of how long I've been following the company and the fact that I work there. So I'm trying really, really hard to break that. And this is why these forums are so helpful. But
I don't know that this forum is going to help with that.
We need Gordon Johnson in here. Maybe next time we'll bring him on. That'd be amazing. By the way, if he listens to this, do you have an open invitation? I'm not even kidding. I would love to talk to the guy. I really would. I think that'd be a super fun discussion. Yeah, it'd be good for entertainment at least. You think about
the discussion when you know exactly what he's going to say, though.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to know each other a little bit. I always wonder about it too, because I feel like a lot more people have more in common with him than they think. It's just he's so vocal about the bear case, and he makes himself look a certain way when he does that it's almost comical. And like my running joke on Twitter, like when people say like, yo, get Gordon Johnson on your channel, I'm like, I'm not ready to bring on comedians yet to the channel. You know, that's like my response, but I'm also just poking fun at the guy. But anyway, you think about, so what is the limiting factor for Tesla to have a full robotaxi network? And all of us know this is data. It's data, right? And so and then the other thing to also think about, this is how I think about Tesla's ability to get robotaxi up and coming as soon as possible, is the fact that when Tesla and Elon have a goal and they put it in place, kind of the quote that you said, they're never on time, but they often, if always, achieve that goal, but it's always late. So within that context is okay. So if Tesla has a plan to get to a million full self-driving beta users by the end of 2022, that's essentially 10x the data capability, the data that's coming into the company from exceptions or whatever on an already further optimized software base that's going to be making less errors. Okay, so you're expanding your user base 10 times to catch the smallest of the smallest things, because by the time you get to the end of the year, theoretically you would have a software suite that's going to be significantly better than we have today. If you go back 1 year from now, if you go back to 2021 May of last year and you look at it now, you look at those videos, the software is completely different. It's a completely different software. Fast forward another year at 10x the user base of data, and where my brain goes is like, okay, so it's just a matter of time. So who cares if it's 2023 or 2024? Tesla's going to be the only one that's going to get there, in my opinion. No other company is going to be able to get even close. So I almost removed the time variable out of the equation, and I'm like, okay, if I feel like this is going to happen, like I feel like the timing almost doesn't matter. And it might be like almost like a non-answer to your question, Hans, but like I always think about it that way. I'm like, who cares when it comes? It's going to come well before anybody else anyway, you know?
Well, I 100% agree with that. Yeah. Like, and I'm not as, that's the beautiful thing about being a long-term investor is as long as we have confidence that it's going to happen, we don't have to worry about the time. And that's one of the, not financial advice, but that's one of the reasons that I love Tesla stock personally, is because like Rodman said, none of the analysts are assigning any value to Robotaxi right now. The market cap can be completely justified by a reasonable PE ratio on 2023, 2024 earnings. And so this is basically like a free call option. And if personally I'm assigning an 80 or 90% likelihood that they will solve, even if not Robotaxi, but they will solve full self-driving, whether or not they turn that into a service, just full self-driving by itself has so much value to provide to customers that it's, a no-brainer that the amount that they can juice their margins with software revenue is incredible. And so, yeah, like from that standpoint, it doesn't cause me to question my investment thesis. But I just want to think through like, what are the likely scenarios and, what kind of other arbitrage opportunities does that reveal in, maybe shorter term plays?
There was one thing I want to throw out there too, like just on that. I had a conversation with Corey from Monroe Live on Wednesday. I want to say it was released Thursday, but I had it on Wednesday. And one of the things they threw out there too is that Tesla could theoretically bring out, so when we think about Robotaxi in this context, it would be purely a play that's for cities as well. So it's kind of like a Waymo type thing that is a 4 to 6 seater facing each other, no steering wheel, no pedals. The safety standards will be completely different because it'll be speed capped. It won't have access to the highways, but theoretically it would be able to serve like cities, essentially, think New York or whatever. So I wonder how that plays into that timeline as well, because if they're already working on that, theoretically, I think he openly said that they were working on some sort of Robotaxi, and the $25,000 car and the Robotaxi sound like two different cars. So is Robotaxi the car for the United States specifically? That's going to be like a Waymo competitor that's going to be released in every single city. And if that's the case, maybe the timeline for that is way sooner than we think, because the only way to really get that thing, the data it needs, because it has the cameras are going to be placed differently. That thing may go live, I don't know, freaking in a beta test next year potentially, right? So how does that look like within the context of the timeline as well? I want to throw that out there as well.
A really quick question kind of on just a little bit of a different perspective on that. Are either of you familiar with Test Loop or any? Yeah, Mike, Rodman, Farz? I remember that they made an economic case why Robotaxi or FSD was not going to be implemented first in cities, that it was actually going to, there's an economic case to be made that intercity, travel in between cities, so LA, San Francisco, trips out to Reno and stuff, that's where they made all their money. So that's one of the things that I was specifically thinking about when Corey made that point is, it's definitely, there's a huge economic case as far as the TAM of Robotaxi in a city. It's much larger than the TAM for traveling between cities. But yeah, I was curious about is that really going to be the first massive use case that we see, or is Tesla correct in that it's going to be a little bit different use case? Because just think about how much easier your FSD drive is on the interstate. That's so much easier of a problem to solve and a place to start. And then because you're traveling at such a high rate of speed, you're collecting such a much higher amount of revenue per mile traveled in that scenario as well. There's just interesting dynamics in thinking about it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I would just say that you go ahead.
I was just saying, I agree.
Yeah, I would think you still have to solve the local streets problem, even if the majority of your stuff is on the freeway. And going back to what Corey said from Monroe, he was saying that he didn't think that there would actually be a dedicated vehicle that would come out. I just like, that's just kind of contrary. That's contrary to what, like Elon said at the last meeting. So I really do think that there's a purpose-built robotaxi vehicle. Like they're going to save so much costs if they redesign the vehicle from the ground up for like robotaxi, because like you said, you're not going to have like great, like off the line performance. You're not going to have all these things that attract a buyer of a car. You just want to get people from A to B, and there's so many first principle optimizations you can make for that vehicle. I would be really surprised if it didn't have, if it wasn't a purpose-built robotaxi vehicle. And the big question, I think, to get into the next topic is sort of like why Tesla is hoarding money. And like another good point that Dave Lee and James Duma, they had a conversation yesterday, and they were saying, like instead of like people want Tesla to take all their excess cash, the free cash flow, and start putting it into like propping up the price or whatever, or share buybacks. But I think, having this big balance could set up Tesla so that they can create this robotaxi fleet where, you don't have to, you can just pay for it yourself and then start amortizing that cost. And then when you start getting paid back, like you wouldn't have that if you wouldn't be able to like produce all those vehicles if you didn't have all that cash. So I don't know. I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, but I do think from a data perspective, the solving city makes a lot more sense, because highway's already solved, if you really think about it, in a way, right? We're pretty damn close, because the Navigator on autopilot, like you said, is so smooth and so easy, and it's actually a much more relaxing experience than you having to fight with a bunch of people on the highway trying to kill you, right? So, I think Tesla, the way, at least from my experience, Tesla always solves the need, and then the profit comes after that. I'm not sure that the strategy for them would be let's launch robotaxi as a city to city thing first, basically like a slower hyperloop is how I would think about it, right? Like the Tesla thing you just talked about. But I think they will try to solve the data question first. I think what they would optimize whatever that is to solve the data solution, because in their mind, that's the thing that's going to help them get this thing as adopted as humanly possible, so we can reduce as many deaths as humanly possible. So and it becomes a net benefit for society, and you remove all the gas burning, fuel burning vehicles out the road, because now you're taking all the pollution out of cities. And since they've already solved the highway piece, that's just theoretically within that context, there's no such thing as an easy switch, but it would be an easy switch for them to flip, right? Because they already are kind of there already. But the cash question is fascinating too within that context, because within, like, what are they doing? What are they doing with all this cash, for real? That's such a great question. And is that the next topic, Rodman, that you want to kick us off with? Is that where you were going towards?
Yeah. I was just I don't know. I think the biggest problem I see with investors, and I mean, it's because a lot of people have a lot of money in this company, and I definitely get where it's coming from, but people have their own desires or their own motivations behind trying to keep the price up, because we all want to see our account values high. But like, if you think about it from that perspective, if Tesla is making decisions based on trying to keep investors happy instead of thinking long-term about what it should do with that cash, I mean, you just have to think that Tesla knows what they're doing, and they have more information than we do, and that they're doing what's right in the long term with that cash. And it's hard to see that because we don't have any insight into it. But like, that's where my heart's at. Like, I feel like it's like, no, I don't want share buybacks. I want growth, right? I want long-term growth. And if they're doing stuff like share buybacks and that's the best thing that they can do, then I think that they would have done it. But trying to push for it, like you're playing a short-term game and they're playing a long-term game. So maybe this, like if that's what you want, maybe you're in the wrong stock is my thinking. What do you guys think?
I mean, yeah. But also, like, let's say the Robotaxi thing is delayed a year or two. They might, if the stock price is still low, they might buy back the stocks, keep them for a year or two, and then once the Robotaxi thing goes live, then the stock price will be higher, hopefully, and then they'll sell. They'll get the cash back, and then start using that towards building their own, like owning their own Robotaxis.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is always a point where, if the stock were to dip so low that it really does start to make a little bit of sense. I don't know if we're there or not. But, I think that's kind of irrelevant long term. Elon has made it very clear that he does not care about short-term bags, yours, his, or anyone else's. Like, he is definitely thinking long term, and if as a long-term investor you're willing to trust him with your capital, he has proven himself over any sort of long-term time frame, whether you want to give it to him for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, like, he will make you a ton of money. And yeah, like you said, Rodman, the only way that he can do that successfully is by not caring about what the short-term sentiment on the company is going to be. And, sometimes he gets frustrated about people that think that way. Because it's just, like, it's not aligned with the long-term best interest of humanity either. Like, and I think that's one of the things that frustrates him about it so much is the closer we look at just stuff at the end of our nose, like, the more likely we are to do dumb things that actually are a net not benefit to humanity. So yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree there too, Hans. I think the Tesla hoarding cash and giving it back to investors is literally the opposite of how Elon thinks about using capital. Like, he wants to use money to further humanity in some way. And so if we're in a world, so even within the context of building out a robotaxi network yourself, that's going to be a flywheel that the more robotaxis you own, the more money you're going to make. So even under that scenario, you're going to have so much free cash flow, it's going to be completely mind-boggling. So where my head goes to is, okay, what are new industries that Tesla could get themselves into that we're not even thinking about that cash is going to be used for to further this? Like, are there auxiliary or sort of industries that are at the periphery of moving us to a sustainable future that we're not thinking about today, that it becomes a no-brainer for Tesla to get into because they have the cash? Okay, so things like, there's been a lot of rumors about Tesla. I don't know, the phone, who knows? He said no, right? The Neuralink is the thing, so maybe we throw that out. But like, housing was one that was brought up. Like, where my head goes to is, like, what are the things that are needed for Mars? Okay, what are the things that are needed for Mars that have to exist that we're not building yet, where there's a market for that on Earth that Tesla can use its cash for in preparation for using those things on Mars? And that's how I think about that free cash flow question. I don't know if that helps sort of like frame that in any way. Yeah.
That my mind goes to is to just double down. Like, solar has been put on the back burner for so long. And that as the cash ramps up, like, he has the complete capability, and he's talked about how the entire United States can operate on a few square miles out in the middle of Nevada somewhere. Like, there's a potential that he's got enough free cash flow to just start building huge solar installations. And especially when you think about the long-term testing requirements of Solar Roof, I know they've done some very small residential installations on Solar Roof that they're kind of monitoring, but one easy thing is, hey, let's just go build a crap ton of these solar roofs somewhere, and we're just going to own them, and we're going to watch their performance, and we're going to keep iterating on them in an agile way, just continue to install more and more and more of them. And then if they want to do the same thing for solar panels, I think they could bring online a lot of solar production capacity, probably a lot faster than they could bring online production for the battery storage necessary for that. So that's kind of the one area where I wonder if they would, basically build out the solar installations ahead of being able to supply those installations with the battery storage necessary. But yeah, to me, that's the thing that makes the absolute most sense. You need that for Mars. We need that for a transition to sustainable energy faster. And it's not, it blows my mind when people think that Elon's going to waste time trying to compete with Apple. Like, he doesn't care about that at all. And so I think that's the first thing, like I said, that my mind goes to, on a place that he could spend money that's super aligned with the company, building on progress they've already made, and accelerating the mission.
And we haven't talked about Tesla Bot. Like maybe all that cash is going to go towards just building a huge amount of Tesla bots, and then they can use the same kind of data approach to just say, we need 50,000 or 100,000 Tesla bots so that they can learn as quickly as possible a fleet of Tesla bots. So that could also be part of the plan. I don't know.
And then there's he's also expressed interest in, like electric flight. So, but like going back to Tesla Bot, I think there's no way to really understand like how much like costs are coming up, especially if they're going to try to ramp up a robotaxi fleet, the Optimus fleet. Like asking for cash back. I just don't. Yeah, trust them.
Yeah. To expand on what you said, Mike, I do think that people are also underestimating how important robotaxi is to Elon. In my mind, I think that is his direct answer to his fears about population collapse. Like, population collapse is a huge threat right now to society. But the question is, why is it a threat? Well, it's because there's not enough labor to produce the stuff to keep expanding the economy. And, when you're in a shrinking economy, then you have a lot of expanded risk for conflict. And so ultimately what you need is a growing economy. So if you have a shrinking number of humans and you want a growing economy, you have to increase both the productivity per person, but maybe you just circumvent the entire need for humans to be the labor input that grows the economy in the first place, and you go all in with Optimus subprime Tesla bots. So I think you hit it right on the head, Mike, as far as like that's a huge it's a huge priority for Elon, but it's a huge mitigation to existential risk to the light of human consciousness and the survival of humanity.
It's so mind-blowing that this is even a discussion in the first place. Like that's really like the thing that I'm grappling with. Like that is such a good point from both of you. That's such a good point. And I wonder how much of AI Day 2 this year is trying to accelerate that. Because even I think when Dave Lee replied to one of his tweets saying, hey, are we going to get a bot demo and or like a sneak peek? And he said yes. That surprised the hell out of me, big time. Because I'm like, okay, dude, let's say it's August. And you said, we might, I think his quote earlier this year or last year was, we might have a, we're going to aim to have a prototype of bot by the end of 2022, sometime in 2022 with production in 2023. I'm like, okay, the bot's coming in 2025. That's where my head went to, right? And then he's like, oh no, yeah, we were going to have a sneak peek on in August. I'm like, what? What do you mean? What does that mean? Okay, but maybe I'm jumping the gun, because that might mean, here's how we're going to build it, and here's the componentry, here's how much it's going to cost, here's how we're going to train it. Great. But then if like, oh, and by the way, here's a live demo of that marks a point, I think, that's exactly related to exactly what both of you have said. And at that point, if you thought the freaking analysts are struggling with modeling FSD, like this is going to be, I mean, we've talked about it many times before, but it starts becoming a reality. It starts becoming a reality. And given that Elon has been so passionately talking about population collapse as of late, and the way you've contextualized, Hans, the fact that the bot is a direct solution to that because of the many different factors you can have from population collapse, which truly they're civilization ending events. They really are. These are like super, super existential. And Elon always thinks in existential context. Everything he does is existential. It's just mind-blowing that we might be there way quicker than we think. And this my bias again. Oh my God, super Tesla fanboy. But like if we see a demo this August, what's going to happen? And then the free cash flow question now has a solution. It's not stock buybacks. It's funding the prevention of societal collapse.
Right?
It's crazy.
But like if you feel like that it's unrealistic, there's actually precedent. Like if you just look at Starship, right? Like 3 years ago, like when he started putting like together like pieces, and you were just like, what the, like it was just so mind-boggling. Like there's just no precedent for a project that big, like just going up and like a couple days. It's like, okay, I'm going to start building one, and then he starts iterating, right, just right off the bat. So to expect this, like if there is something, to expect it to be as good as what it's going to be, no. But there could be something, and there's precedent for that. And like, I mean, I'm trying to keep down my expectations, but like, yeah, I will not be completely floored if there is some kind of prototype. Like it's going to be very rudimentary. It's going to be like the first iteration, but 50 iterations down the line, it's going to be something that's interesting, right? What do you guys think?
I mean, I don't know. I think 50's a lot, but I mean, they iterate so fast, so that could be like a year or two. So
Farz, I was like, that's 2 days.
Yeah. Yesterday, bro. It's done.
Yes. Yeah, I like, and then I remember Warren Redlick. He has a YouTube channel, and he and you interviewed him, right? He was saying, he was asking people on Twitter, like, do you think, like, if Tesla sold the Tesla bot for, I don't know, was it $50,000 or $40,000 or something dollars, would you have it like do chores around the house so that Tesla could collect more data, and then maybe one day with an over-the-air update, your Tesla bot will be worth a lot, and it'll do all the chores and a bunch of other things, go shopping for you and whatever else. And I was just like, yeah, I mean, all these things are possible, and we're not really, it's kind of something we don't talk about much right now because we haven't seen a prototype, and so it's kind of a pie in the sky idea. But if we see a prototype in August, I just really look forward to the kind of discussions that'll be happening after that. Anyway.
Dude, I can tell you right now, the killer use case for Optimus Subprime is a babysitter. Like,
yeah, that
would be crazy.
Dude, babysitter, and then you got all the robotaxis driving the parents to and from bars, going out getting drunk. Like Tesla will be like the party facilitator,
Oh, so that's Elon's second solution to population collapse.
Dude,
get everybody drunk and take care of their kids.
Exactly. I mean, it really, it's like the question becomes like, why do we even have population collapse? Why is it the case that less people are having children? And is Elon actively trying to solve that problem? We talked about the bot being the labor solution, but at the same time, I don't think you want to end up in a place where you have the bot population becomes larger over time versus the human population. I don't know if that's a good thing. Is that a good thing? Right? then we start talking about that as well. And so is Elon thinking about also increasing the human population as well? Like, is that part of the equation, you know? But like in a world where labor becomes handled by robots, will humans become more willing to bring children into the world where they feel like they can provide a future for those children? You know, like I'm 35, my wife and I don't have kids, but we want to have a family. We want to start a family here pretty soon. But why are people having less kids? And I know there's been studies around like the more affluent a civilization becomes, or people become, the less kids they have over time. But why? Why is that? I don't know if anybody has any insight into that, but like, why is that?
Have you ever watched Idiocracy?
No, but I heard that's a
oh my gosh
thing to watch.
It's a really great explanation on why.
Okay.
So basically, the smarter you get, like the more you can think through all the reasons why you can't have kids or don't want to have kids or want to postpone having kids. Like, you know, I got to make more money so that I can provide a stable future. And then, yeah, like the people that aren't worrying about all those things are just having all kinds of kids. So yeah, there's definitely a dynamic that goes there. But I think that, yes, Elon is definitely thinking about that problem. And I think that's part of what he's talking about when he says, you know, I want to create a future that people can be hopeful about or get excited about. Like, I think that's one of those factors, is that, you know, as a society becomes more affluent, and as they have more options, if they don't feel like the future is an exciting place, then like the intelligent decision is, hey, if the future is going to be hard and scary, like I don't want to subject my kids to that, so I'm not going to have as many kids. And so a world where the future is exciting, you know, helps to mitigate that. And I mean, for me personally, I would say that two of the things that have inspired the most awe in me were the Falcon Heavy landing, Hoppy, and then watching Starship stick that landing finally and not explode. Yeah. I mean, even the one that stuck the landing and did explode. Like, there's just this sense of incredible, like, you know, that this is a moment in history that not just people 50 years from now, but like literally generations from now could look back at that, you know, somebody living on Mars 150 years from now, or, you know, assuming we make it to other solar systems, like thousands of years from now, can trace their life back to the moment when multiplanetary travel became possible. And so that's just such a huge, like, I don't think people really grasp the significance of that for the moment.
But going back to your question, Farzad, like how old were you when you got married, if I can ask?
Oh my God. 2016. So that was 6 years ago. I'm 35, 29.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of it is people pushing off marriage, pushing off having kids for careers. Like, I don't know about you guys. I'm in my late 40s. My second kid was in my 40s. My first was in my late 30s. You just don't have enough time to have as many kids. It's more difficult, especially here in LA. A lot of our friends are 2 or 1 child families. There are 3, but like, you know, having an Elon with 7 kids, or is it 8 now? I don't know. Like, that just doesn't happen. Like, actually, there's some communities where they are a lot of children, but I think it's difficult. Like, you have to have a lot of resources. You want the best for your kids. You don't want to split all your resources amongst like a lot of children, right? There's a lot of things like that, I think. I don't know. Like, do you guys have married children? No.
Yeah, so I'm married, and my wife and I are foster parents. So that's been the path for us. We realized we weren't able to have kids without doing IVF, and that was just a decision that we made, was to try and provide homes to children that didn't have them, and then we'll see. Hopefully there's an adoption in the future, but it's a very uncertain potential outcome.
It's a beautiful thing you guys are doing, man. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great stuff. Absolutely. Yeah. I think there was another thing about the free cash flow question too, where Elon very recently had a tweet around. So I think what's his name? Omar from Whole Mars blog tweeted, and he said, Elon told you guys the stock price is it's too high, and now that it's too high, blah blah blah. Like Omar likes to crack jokes and it's kind of has his own tone, which I appreciate. But then Elon came in and he replied and said, it's true, but well, oh my God, let me actually quote him exactly, because there was something within the context of becoming a energy provider that yet again might be a clue into how Elon is thinking about the free cash flow question and what they're going to do with all that cash. Yeah. Let me just give me a hot second, and I'll try to fill in the air as I do that, so I don't have to edit this part out, but I probably will have to, because this is a very poorly planned. Let me tell a joke as I do this. Come on, where are you? Damn it. All right, let me try to quote it off the top of my head. But essentially, he said something like, if you think about Exxon, if Tesla's market cap becomes larger than Exxon's or Saudi Aramco, something like that. Anyway, like he was putting it within the context of an energy generation sort of company.
I think I found it.
Okay, what does it say?
Yeah, Holmar said, bro, he told you the stock price was too high. He told you recession was coming. Why'd you ignore and then get mad at him, lol? And then Elon says, indeed I did. However, I also think that Tesla has the potential to be the most valuable company ever. When Tesla's market cap making sustainable energy products exceeds that of Aramco producing fossil fuels, that the future will be good for Earth.
Yeah, so that was like an interesting comparison, right? So whenever I read his tweets, I'm trying to say, okay, what is Elon thinking about that made him write that tweet? So he used the context of an oil producer. Okay, so is that where his head is at right now when he's thinking about what's the thing that's going to get Tesla to largest company ever? Is it going to be the energy generation aspect of it versus the cars or whatever else that's happening in the near term? And what's the time scale that he's thinking about that's going to happen? And the fact that he used that as a comparison was interesting. So I just want to throw it out there as a quick topic before we move on to the next one.
You got me thinking. If Tesla's a huge energy provider, and then on top of that, they are the best at turning that energy into useful things, useful goods and services and labor and things like that, then that's like a double whammy, right? It's like they're the best at producing the energy and then the best at utilizing that energy.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly right. I mean, he's said, like, if you've been following for a while, he's been saying for a long time that, the energy company, the energy side of Tesla could be as big as the car side. And we just haven't seen that yet. People are kind of waiting for it. But I mean, it's not going to be easy, but like maybe we are seeing it with like all the battery plants, backup plants are coming up. I think, I don't know. I've lost my train of thought. Han, do you have anything?
Yeah, I 100% agree on that. And because there's a huge degree to which the world economy is like energy cost is a constraint on the size of the world economy. And so, I think the way that ARC, a lot of times they talk about the elasticity of demand, that if you can reduce the cost of energy, then you probably by half, you probably quadruple the amount of energy demand at that price. It's not a linear correlation there. And so if Tesla can get to the point where they can produce just an incredible amount of energy, they can meet the full demand, they, for every whatever incremental reduction in energy price that they can achieve, they just unlock more and more and more demand. And so in that way, like, you can almost say that there is an unlimited demand for the energy that they can bring to the market at a price that is below whatever fossil fuels are. And when you look at Wright's law and the ability of an economy of scale to continue to reduce the price of energy production over the course of the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, that's just an incredible win, not only for Tesla as a company, but for humanity as a whole. If you can provide electricity to remote villages in Africa, and at the same time you can provide them with Starlink internet access, at prices that they can actually reasonably, like, you give them through the internet a potential to be a contributor to the world economy, and then give them free, energy that supports their ability to do that at a cost that they can more than afford. This is just another way that, like, literally the size of global GDP 50 years from now could make today's GDP look like peanuts.
Yeah. So I guess another thing we could talk about is, this is kind of going towards like some of the 4680 stuff that we've been talking about. If you can if they can build.
I have one more question kind of related to, before we leave the topic of, things that they can spend their free cash flow on to basically, I think whatever Elon views as a bottleneck, either for the company or for humanity, is where they'll end up spending that money. But one of the things that he used to say repeatedly that I haven't heard him mention in a long time, that I still have a few lingering questions on, is just talent acquisition. They keep doing these AI Day events and other things, and they're always billed as recruiting. And Elon used to say that, there's not a factory that just sits there and spits out world-class engineers that he can use to solve all these technical problems that he's trying to work on. And so I know that has been a constraining factor. It seems like there are things that they're kind of doing in that arena currently, but it's mostly focused on recruiting and not necessarily focused on increased, essentially, production of engineering talent. So I'm curious what y'all think, and then especially Farzad, with your experience inside the company, like, is that something that seems like a constraining factor when you work there? And is it something that Elon needs to, or should, or is investing brain cycles and money into?
Yeah, I mean, I can throw my 2 cents. Sorry, Rodman, go ahead.
I was just asking, are you asking if there's a Texas Institute of Technology and Sciences coming?
Maybe.
I mean, I know Elon has talked about education before. It goes back to the free cash flow question. Could Tesla get into education somehow? I don't freaking know. Is that somehow tied to the plan of, like, moving us towards a sustainable future? And if the bottleneck is talent, and then education in a way fixes that, right? I think the interesting thing about Tesla is that I still believe that most of Tesla's talent still hasn't been hired yet, and it doesn't need to be trained. They just haven't made it to the company yet, because they are a global company, and they're becoming more global as we go through it. And as long as Elon and his team have the same sort of culture embedded in the company, I'm not really concerned about them getting the right talent, because Tesla, in a way, turns you into that. It's almost like The one thought that I always had, that it's becoming more and more prevalent the longer I'm away from the company, is Tesla exceptionally good at hiring the right talent, or is Tesla exceptionally good at getting people in the door that happen to be most people, and then giving them a mission that they are passionate about, and that automatically makes them much more talented. Essentially, they bloom into who they're supposed to be. Okay. I think if there is a real bottleneck around getting people in the door that is the right level of talent, right level of background, I think Elon will solve that by getting into education somehow, or partnering with certain schools and funding them and getting them the correct training, and approaching things, like the whole first principle standpoint, and really trying to get them in a mentality that's going to allow them to be successful at those companies, which theoretically would also allow them to be successful at other companies as well. But I'm not so sure that's a bottleneck yet. I'm not so sure it's going to be for a long time. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I think about it.
It does, and it also just, I want to personally thank both you and Joe Justice for really bringing this specific insight about the company to the public. The discussions that y'all have had both together and separately about the culture inside, and then the way that Joe talks about the agile methodology and the way that Elon has implemented that inside of, both Tesla and SpaceX, I'm sure also in Neuralink and the Boring Company. Like, the effect that has on the creativity and productivity of the workforce seems to be pretty incredible. I love your story about the janitor that worked with you at the warehouse and his ability to contribute like a massive thing to the company, to be able to increase, what was it, throughput material, or what was it?
It was like 20% or something, which is significant. That's a big freaking number.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. So I think that's something that it also is completely underappreciated by the market, probably underappreciated by 95% of even Tesla investors, something that I couldn't see from the outside until y'all started talking about it. So I really appreciate bringing that forward.
Of course. Yeah. I think on the last discussion, we the culture was the machine that builds the machine that builds the machine, and I thank you for saying that. And that was one of the primary reasons why I even started the channel, was because I felt like I had some knowledge that I could share. And the fact that there's value in it is great. So I appreciate that. Yeah. What does everybody else think?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Should we move on? But I agree. Like, it's hard to express like how much, like, all these little things within the company, like learning about the machine that builds the machine that builds the machine, like seeing other people, and it's not just you guys now. I think a lot of other people are seeing it. You can see it in SpaceX. We're getting like tours of what's going on inside SpaceX, and they're building Starship. And then even getting those interviews with Elon, you're really seeing like how this is such a different company. And, whether people are kind of oblivious to that or not, I think the people who are really searching out, like trying to get deep into Tesla and not just scratching the surface. And I do keep talking about this. There's a lot of people who haven't scratched the surface of what Tesla is. And like, once you start scratching, like it's such a transformational company.
It's very
It's a deep dark hole.
Yeah.
It is. It's so deep. I mean, and I really feel like Tesla and SpaceX are going to be the blueprint for like a new generation of companies. I mean, there's like almost no doubt, because it's just so much more effective. It's like the software industry in the last 20 years has transformed because of agile methodologies. Just the rapid iteration of like just products, like just seeing Tesla, like you can see it in Tesla software, that when you buy your car, and like I got our first one in 2018 and it still feels fresh because the software has been updated. there's just so many of these little intangible things that happen when you move to this agile methodology that like it just puts everyone else it just makes them obsolete. So that's my thinking. And that's the Tesla advantage. So
yeah. Mike, any thoughts? And if not, then maybe kick us off with the next topic.
I just love what they call it, the DSM, the digital self-management. I absolutely love that. Like I wish I had that like at every job I worked. It's like I want to know like how much profit did I make for the company today, and how does that compare to yesterday? And what are the biggest, what are the biggest problems? I always had to go to the manager and ask like, what should I be working on? Because I had no idea. But the DSM just eliminates that. And like at Tesla, like everyone could be the manager. Like they just take turns every day or something. And it's like the manager's just there for like regulatory reasons or something. And like everyone's just helping each other. And the manager's like just kind of keep an eye out, make sure, people get help when they need it, that they're looking over. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just such a beautiful culture. I love it. I hope other companies copy that. But yeah, let's go to the next one.
Okay. Mike, what do you got for us?
Well, we already talked about this kind of the Tesla Bot helping with the aging population, making people want to have kids. So also the other question was, will out of work taxi drivers, et cetera, or just anyone who loses their job due to automation turn into like the Luddite movement back in the day when they were tearing apart new technology because they're worried that it would put them out of work and make them go homeless and stuff like that. And if that happens, who's going to stop? Like, how do you stop the vandalization of Tesla bots or robotaxis, stuff like that? How will that work? What do you guys think?
What do you think?
I don't know. Like, I mean, obviously there's cameras everywhere, so you'd have to wear a mask, but I don't know, like people can just put on a mask and go vandalize things and like you can like increase police presence or whatever, or like you could have some passionate people or whatever that follow, the people who did the crime and try to, hold them accountable or something, get them arrested or whatever. But I don't know how that works. It sounds complicated because usually I hear like, like you call the police and they show up like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes later. By then they've fled the scene and it's too late. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a risk. I mean, like maybe that's the one good thing is if Tesla is owning, like, let's go back to the Robotaxi situation. If Tesla, if certain percentage of the cars are Tesla owned and operated, then Tesla can manage that whole problem. But if it's an owner's car, you are responsible and you're going to have to manage that yourself. And so I feel like it will be sort of a pain point, but that'll be sort of it's just a financial decision that you have to make. It's like, okay, I'm spending this much on like maintaining, repairing, or like resolving these issues that someone else has caused, versus like how much I'm making off of it. Yeah, it does bring up some interesting issues. Like, I mean, I guess we do have some there are security parts of the car right now, right? So you got Sentry mode. I mean, I wonder if that's adaptable to like resolving some of those issues as well, right? Like, I would think it would be hard for someone, if you go back to the Optimus situation, it might be hard to vandalize the Optimus really well because it's got cameras. I mean, I imagine it's probably going to have cameras on the back of its head too, like just so it can be fully aware of all of its. I mean, it's just like in the same sense, our cars have eyes all the way around its body. So I imagine the car will. I mean, the robot will as well. So I'm not too worried about Optimus, the car situation, the Robotaxi situation, putting my own car in a Robotaxi situation. Yeah, I do have concerns, but I think it's just going to end up being a financial decision. Hans, any thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think this is something that Elon thinks about, and that's why he's talked about things like UBI, is because, on the one hand, like there's just this massive societal benefit to being able to provide these services at a much lower price point than they exist currently. That doesn't negate, the human empathy that we feel for the workers who are now displaced by that. So I think that's the inclination towards something like UBI, or even if it was something that was specifically targeted. I would not be at all surprised if Elon did have some sort of initiative to try to provide people that are affected by that with something productive that they could do. I think it's a huge risk. I think that it's something that Tesla is not ignoring, and that I think that there's a very significant likelihood that they'll apply their problem solving energy to that specifically, especially if it starts to, not that they're sensitive to media coverage, but they are sensitive to doing the right thing. And if this just raises the awareness of a problem to another level, that it will be something that they devote resources to. That's kind of my thoughts on the issue. I really, as far as what the actual solutions can be, I kind of would be at a loss. I think that would have to be something that would just need some actual agile iteration to try some things and see what they can do to work it out. But yeah, I think that's where I'm at on what I foresee there. And I also think that that's a much larger problem that affects a lot more companies than just Tesla. And so it's also an opportunity if they can create some innovative solutions in that area, that there's a lot of value that they can provide to society in whatever solutions that they can create there.
What if I had an idea, just real quick. What if they tinted all the windows so you couldn't see if there were people in the car or not? And some of the Tesla, see if there's a person in the car, it might be the owner, and the owner would obviously get out and say, "Hey, you just vandalized my car." And so there's this fear of getting caught. Or then I also like your idea of maybe Tesla, if there's no UBI still, them kind of giving them some money for a temporary period of time while they get back on their feet after losing their job or something. I don't know. What were you saying, Farz?
Sorry, Robin, did you want to say something?
So I think with AI coming into prominence as much as it is, we're going to see more and more of these disruptions. If you're familiar with GPT-3, it's an AI engine that can basically take an input and generate a whole bunch of stuff, and it can do things like generate wiki pages, and it can generate software code and stuff. But I mean, it's not at the point, but it's getting to the point where we're going to see more and more disruptions of AI taking over human stuff. But I think if you're talking about production, we have sort of I guess prototypes that we can rely on. If you think to Star Trek, those kind of worlds where production is not an issue, right? Those societies they're virtually socialist societies where they're not making money, right? You don't have an income. You're at a point where you can just say, "Oh, I want food," and then the starship generates it for you, right? TeslaBot's kind of similar. If you have enough of them, you can basically produce stuff without any cost except for what cost it took to make those resources. And then if you think that TeslaBot could eventually be in charge of harvesting those resources, then your only cost there is power, right? And if Tesla's generating all this power free from the sun, you've got power for free, you've got labor for free, you've got manufacturing for free. So basically, what is it costing you? Does it make sense to charge money for that? Because the reason we charge money for things is because I built this and I want to be returned for it. I want something in return for it so I can do something else with that money. But if no one's doing that, right? If everyone's just sitting there running robots and the energy is free, the resources are free, what does an economy even mean anymore? And I think he's even said that. He's like, yeah, like Tesla bot, economies might not even make sense anymore. So, it does seem like if Tesla bot Optimus gets to that point, like, are we looking at having a regular economy anymore? I don't know. I mean, if it's super capable, if it can do as many things as people can do, society changes. That's the only thing that can happen. So I don't know.
Yeah, just to build on that point, Thomas Sowell's book, Basic Economics, his central theme throughout the book is that an economy is the method by which we allocate a set of scarce resources. So if all of a sudden the resources are not scarce, then it really does change all the normal roles of current economics. So yeah, and I think that's, like you said, that's the point that Elon's been making. Like, what is an economy if goods and services are abundant and essentially free?
So I think Elon getting into the let me see if I can bring these two things together, because this is exactly where my brain went to. I think the reason why Elon getting into the Twitter and politics game is exactly in preparation for that transition. And so let me try to walk you through it. Okay. So in a world where full self-driving and robotaxi is taking drivers away, okay, driver jobs are going away. In a world where the bot is replacing labor potentially, okay, and you think about the political landscape that exists, how easy is it going to be for one side to say, look at the richest man in the world who's creating things to take away your wages away from you, okay? He is taking your jobs away. He's taking your money away. What are you going to do about it? Okay? So that the point that Mike made around the vandalism and how much potential things are going to come down the pike because of that, I think are very, 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 very real. And I think it's going to be part of the transition to going towards that end game of that what is the economy at that point. I think the transition is going to be I'm probably very pessimistic on it. I think it's going to be freaking ugly. I think it's going to be really, really ugly. And it's going to be extremely easy for one side to make. If you thought Elon was an evil person now, just wait. Like, just wait and see how they paint the guy. When he's trying to get us to that point of plenty for everybody. But as that transition happens, there's going to be some replacement of labor and displacement of labor, and they're going to paint him in a specific way. Okay. And I think the Twitter acquisition and him getting into politics more now is in preparation for that transition. I think Twitter is a way for him to try to push his truth, whatever that is, what the goals are, and trying to become more politically active is a way for him to say, hey, like, I'm getting ready for this. Like, I know this is coming. Okay, I know this is coming and I'm getting ready for it. So within that context of us moving towards a more automated future, these two things make perfect sense. Perfect sense. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, because that's kind of where my head goes when we talk about this topic.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Oh, you go first, Robin.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I think, I mean, like, if he got deplatformed or something like that, and he just lost his ability to defend himself, to share who he is, and let people see, like, let the sunlight shine on him. If he lost that opportunity, then yeah, a lot of people would hate him. And the Luddite movement, I think, lasted like 10 years or something. It wasn't like a short thing. It was brutal. People were dying, and stuff was being destroyed all the time. And like, if that happens again, that, I don't know. It's like, I hope that so much money will be generated or saved. I'm not sure how you'd put that, but so much money will be made that there'll be enough to share with the people who lost their jobs, and so it wouldn't be so scary. But I could still see a lot of people saying, I don't want those Elon bucks or whatever, and getting upset about it. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think it might even turn into something that's more fundamental, like let's say he's running Robotaxis, and Robotaxis are now free, right? So suddenly, this company is providing a service that has no cost associated with it. It might just get to the point where, like Tesla's giving out cars for free or something. I don't know, or providing services for free because that are enabled by Optimus, right? It's like, if you can have restaurants that are like serving food, and like the food is picked by a robot and the food is served by a robot and prepared by a robot, and it's just as good as anything you could get anywhere else, and it was free, suddenly it's like that's the kind of thing that you need to do if if Optimus is taking over, right? It's like you can't charge for those things anymore because it's free, right?
But some people are going to lose their ability to buy anything, period, right? So if you're replacing a job that's $40,000 a year, food is like 10% or 20% of your budget, right? So where's the other 80%? So that still gives a attack vector, as he likes to call it, that's going to say the reason why you're not making money anymore is because Elon took away your job. Oh, and by the way, he's pocketing the entire your paycheck in his pockets, right? Yeah. And I hate to be the guy that's drafting the freaking political agenda for whoever wants to attack him, but like it's so obviously going to happen,
Yeah.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Here's my just thinking through the mechanics and the underlying math of it. If there's a nonlinear, an elasticity of demand that is nonlinear, and that reducing the cost of a good or service does more than double, so quadruple, maybe 10x the amount of demand that there is for that product, then you're able to generate, as long as you can maintain good profit margins, there's a very real potential that in growing the TAM of that good or service, that you generate a surplus profit that far exceeds the original size of that market, whatever it was. So I think if they tackle goods and services where that is something, that dynamic is true of that market, that they can reasonably and mathematically afford to literally pay all of the displaced workers a salary based on the wages that they lost. Now, should they do that? Will they do that? That I don't know. I'm just talking about this is a realistic possibility based on the amount of money that is being generated. And I think that with a large enough amount of free cash flow and coupled, and this goes back to your point, Farzad, is distribution of messaging, that as long as Elon has secured a forum that he can communicate directly with people, and he has a large enough amount of free cash flow, history has shown over and over and over and over and over again that you can win people over to your side with free stuff literally every day, all day long. Maybe what it is that instead of providing people with the direct monetary compensation for the job that they've lost based on a new product that you've brought to market, maybe you just provide them with all the goods and services that they would have bought with that money instead. And you're already entering into those markets and providing those services. And so maybe, you're a displaced worker from the service here. You get to participate in this market that other people have to pay for at this point in time, but you get it for free. So, I think there's a lot of first principles leeway to create solutions there.
Yeah, I like what you're going there, where you're going there. I think actions speak more than words. So if he does things, that's going to speak a lot more than saying something on Twitter. But I mean, I do agree that having that as well would be ideal. But yeah, it's so hard to figure out like his motivations with Twitter. But I think it's an interesting take.
Well, like Farzad said, like this is definitely something that Elon is thinking about, and we've seen over and over and over again. He's planning so far in advance, like the announcement of Giga Nevada back when the entire world's battery production was 30 gigawatt hours. He's like, yeah, we're going to make a battery plant that is the whole size of global battery production just here in Nevada. That speaks to, so like, we don't have to rely on speculation that this is the type of thinking that Elon does. Like he's shown this over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so, when we think about even, raw materials is one of the things that also kind of keeps me up at night a little bit, thinking about like, how the heck are we going to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy when we don't have the capacity in the supply chain to, yeah, there's plenty of lithium in the ground, but there's not the method for extracting and converting it into usable battery materials. And so like, that's nerve wracking for me, but oh, wait a second. Yeah. Like Elon knows that. He's got way smarter people than me that he's talking to on how to think through those problems. So yeah, I think that this is exactly falls under that same umbrella. And like, I think that Twitter is, he's talked a lot for a long time about thinking about what the economy and the government will look like on Mars too. Like he's got to think through all that. And so, these are first principles problems that he has to deal with regardless of what happens here on Earth, but having to think through those problems for Mars also introduces him to those dynamics sooner than other people are thinking about them. And then when stuff happens, it's like, oh yeah, like I've already been thinking about this for 20 years now. Like, let's start trying this, and this.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see them using, I could see him utilizing Twitter to kind of extract the best ideas of how to solve these human problems, because human problems I don't really consider them a first principles kind of problem. I'm sure we're made out of atoms and stuff, but our psychology it's better. I think it's better thought of as a different kind of thing, a different kind of problem, and that's where kind of Twitter will become kind of this. I mean, it already is kind of this, but it's like a hive mind of ideas, right? And we'll be sharing, and the best ideas will surface, and hopefully we'll get through this difficult time as people transition to like the age of robots.
Democratizing problem solving is Twitter. I think the other thing too is like we've seen Elon do incredible things with non-scaled, limited cash environment. And now we're entering an age where Elon's going to have fully scaled and an ungodly amount of cash at his disposal. What is he going to do with that? He's already been able to achieve incredible things on a shoestring. And now we're transitioning to Elon with all the resources he could ask for and then some. I think that, like, have we seen yet what that Elon looks like? I don't know if we have. The bot might be like step one, but like what, I have this like theory that he's going to get into like the habitat game, like he's going to build habitats where you're going to be able to like have 1,000 people in those habitats. It's going to be perfectly weather controlled. No weather can ever bring it down, 80 degrees and perfect every single time. And then you're going to build those things in super remote areas. And then people are going to be able to like live in these incredible, in the freaking middle of the Grand Canyon. I don't freaking know. And they're going to be like just in a perfect bubble, and they're going to have Starlink internet, and they're going to figure out how to freaking pipe in water and blah, blah, blah. Like that's what's needed for Mars, right? So like, what does that look like? And I think all the things that we're talking about within this context is like, it's no thought is too impossible with a person that has that kind of team around him with essentially unlimited resources. The sky is the freaking limit. and I'm trying so hard to temper my expectation, but we haven't seen what that looks like yet. We literally haven't seen it. Tesla just became super profitable a year ago, and they're just starting to build out what those possibilities could look like from a bot perspective and whatnot. So I don't know. And I'm curious, like, am I thinking about the future of Tesla and his companies through the right lens, unless I'm thinking about him in that position? Like, am I still thinking too small? And I'm constantly asking myself that question at the danger of sounding like a lunatic. You know what I'm saying? So, but at the same time, like, if there's somebody that's going to be able to achieve that, I feel like it's a person like him,
Yeah, I mean, I think in a future that is changing at an exponential, not linear rate, like, the only way to think about the future realistically at this point in time, it's impossible not to sound like a lunatic. Like, if you are able to realistically predict what the future looks like today, I guarantee it will sound absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I mean, the reason it sounds insane is because you bring up an idea of habitats in the middle of nowhere. It's like, do you know the cost of all the work it would take, all the labor it would take to transport all the things and to maintain that and yada yada? And it's like, well, if labor becomes super duper cheap, that's not a problem anymore. So we have to change our entire mindset. Just think, okay, the world is made out of matter, and we have energy coming from the sun, and with the energy we can use to transform the matter into pretty much any shape we want. We could have like huge swaths of just uninhabited parts of the world, just multi-layered buildings of just like climate controlled perfection and people living in VR. I don't know, like the world can get really crazy really fast, and people say, oh, well, not in my lifetime, but I'm like, it could be though. You don't know that.
Physics says it's possible.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And you have a guy who thinks at the limit of physics, right? It's like, is it physically possible? And then what's the right thing to do? I think, like, if it were someone who didn't exhibit signs of like thinking like for humanity, I would be worried. But like, for him to be sort of this person who can think like at first principles level, and like where reality is basically the limit, physics is the limit, and then to also have like a human side to it where he actually cares. And a lot of people debate about that, but like, I mean, if you really follow him, it's pretty clear that like he is not being like selfish, right? It's like he's not the one buying 100-foot yachts. He has an airplane, but he has to go places, right? I don't know.
So this actually brings up I have this weird belief, or I think it's a very realistic possibility that I would put it maybe not probable. I wouldn't say it's 50% likely, but I'd say maybe 30% likely that Elon does not accept another compensation package. That he is going to continue, like, he's already the richest person in the world, right? That I don't think in his mind he views increasing his personal wealth as a net benefit to his missions. I think it actually is a net cost. Like, for every order of magnitude that he increases in personal wealth from here forward, he has a massive reduction in his public perception. And so I think that he would prefer to use all of that capital towards advancing his missions, and then doing that. I mean, he's already got control of the money as the CEOs of these companies, and he's got control of how it's spent. So it doesn't need to be personally attached to his finances for him to be able to do the things that he thinks are important with them. So yeah, people have talked about that. I think that there is a level at which investors would like to see it because they want to know what his goals are. And like, the clearest way to see his vision for Tesla in the past has been, okay, look at the CEO compensation plan. So I don't know if there's a way, like, if he's just planning to provide that clarity with Master Plan Part 3. I think that that's a very realistic possibility. And
I came to the same conclusion. I was like at this point, does he have enough money to do what he needs to do, right? And like you said, I mean, it's hard to think of what he would do with his own personal wealth. Like, he was able to use it to purchase Twitter, but at some point, I would think that he would achieve most of his goals through the company itself, right? Through his companies themselves. And it just didn't make sense to have Tesla buy Twitter, right?
Yeah.
But like, it would have been a lot safer if like he could have used one of his other companies to say like, oh, we're buying Twitter and this is how it's going to make sense. But there's just no way to make that work with Twitter. If he,
the stock price, I was just going to say, if the stock price 10x is from here, like his existing amount of shares is already going to give him just an ungodly net worth. And so, like he's already got enough to do any of those like personal projects that he finds important. The number of people that like, he just needs to make a few phone calls, and he had to put up like a little bit of margin loan to get the ball rolling on the deal. But like he followed that up with enough personal relationships that he had with people like, hey, I'm going to invite you into this deal. And like, people are just jumping in on it. So like it's not something where he's going to need that for any of his kind of ancillary projects.
That's a great point.
So, but I think that thinking about like Elon has all the resources available at his fingers to accomplish his missions. And then, so maybe he does, back to Farzad's point, like starts building these habitat communities. It's like, okay, your job got displaced by one of our products. Here, we're going to invite you, come be one of the first people in our Teslatopia, which I hate that I just coined that term, actually. Feels gross. Forget that. No Teslatopia. I don't want to live there. But like he could totally say, hey, you used to drive a truck and you made $80,000 a year transporting stuff all around the country, and like that was a super necessary and need, like we need so many truck drivers right now. Like, who wants to go start a truck driving career when it looks like 5 years from now you're not going to have a job? So like he could totally say, hey, come drive trucks for Tesla, or we're going to find something else. Just like going back to the point that we were talking about earlier, Elon's companies and methodology of doing business allows people to unlock so much personal potential that they had. And so, hey, like if being displaced gives you an invitation to join the company and you get to experience that, like, on the one hand, it seems like an incredible problem, but maybe it's honestly like the biggest opportunity that they've ever received.
You guys just blew my mind with the fact that he wouldn't accept the compensation package. I mean, the implications of that are pretty spectacular. I mean, especially if he continues this sort of trend of him being in front of the lines and leading by example and working his ass off, and then saying that, you know what, me having a stake in the companies is more than good enough. I don't want anything else for me. I want every single profit, every single thing that's generated by the company to go back into the company and potentially to the people. How do you derail that? Like, how that becomes an extremely powerful message to the rest of the world. It's almost like it's a shield that he'll have that will protect him against the cause of his being a greedy person, being a evil billionaire, right? Now the question becomes, okay, how in the world are investors going to be confident that there's an incentive structure in place for Elon to not, for the company to continue to grow? But I think in the case of Elon, that's a separate story, because Elon is very obviously not motivated by money. But do investors believe that? And do people that want to further the company's mission believe that, right? That's freaking, I have to think through that more, because that's such a fascinating outcome, and it sounds likely. I think you're right. I think there is definitely an above non-zero chance, an above zero chance of this happening, and it would be very it would send a lot of shockwaves. And I'm curious that instead of the incentive structure being tied to, like production, and then he would get X number of shares, I wonder how he could restructure a incentive program that somehow rewards either the workforce or the people, the population somehow. So instead of him getting paid, say, $100 billion worth of stocks, the people who work at Tesla, there's a pool and it gets, boom, everybody gets paid this much, So instead of him getting the money, everybody else gets the money. I don't know. That's so exciting to think about. That's so exciting, because his current compensation plan is up this year, I believe. I think he's going to hit every tranche, and this year it's done. So like, we'll know this year if this is the case or not. I don't think they'll just won't say, nah. I don't think it's going to be like, nah, I don't need a compensation package. I think they're going to make this into a deal. Like, hey, politicians that hate me, look at this. I'm building out these things that are incredibly valuable for society. By the way, it fits your agenda of a green future, and I'm doing it for free. Okay? I'm doing it for free. Wow. Yeah, that's super fascinating. I don't know if you guys have any more thoughts. Yeah.
Like, if you think like of what he already has, right? Benefits if the stock increases, right? So if the company performs, he's already getting a reward. So he's already incentivized because he owns so much stock. Like the same way we're all incentivized to buy Tesla stock. It's like, we see a future, we want it to grow. So like, yeah.
But it's so anti like the human experience of like, I want more. Like every single other person in that seat in the history of mankind is like, no, more, like more. Right. More for me. And this is like, now I'm good.
Character for Elon. It's so in character for Elon.
It is. And like, I feel like his whole goal is like, I want to get people to Mars. I want life to be multiplanetary. I want the Earth to not die out. Things like that. I want to see humanity travel amongst the stars. And it's like, well, now I have enough. If Tesla's going to be successful, if Tesla's going to hit these market cap goals or whatever, then I will have enough to even if no one else wants to, I can fund the entire Mars thing. I could fund, and then the Starlink is helping out. Like, we're good. If that's the math, I don't know if that's the math, but if it's enough, then he'll just be like, he'll just tell everyone that this is why I wanted the compensation plan. I'm doing this almost like philanthropic, like out of love for humanity. He says that all the time. He loves humanity. So
yeah. He said that. I mean, like, if you think of Tesla as a philanthropic company, like it's so weird that people don't see that. It's like what else? This company does make money. It is a for-profit company, but that makes it sustainable. But at the same time, what Tesla is doing is it's pulling carbon dioxide. It's preventing it from being burned, right? Like, it's so weird. I don't understand how people don't see it. It's fascinating.
Mike, you actually just made a point that caused something to click for me, and that's, he's talked about the self-sustaining colony on Mars so many times and how many people that's going to take. And if he's got the money to scholarship people for tickets to Mars, like that could be one of those other subsidy things that we talked about earlier. Like, oh yeah, I'm sorry you don't get to drive trucks here on Earth. Want to go to Mars? How's that sound? Like,
yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's also going to be like, he's got to be careful with that though, because I think there's going to be a lot of voices that are going to come out and say, this is like indentured servitude. He's got to be careful with that too. True. Yeah. It's like, oh no, you can't do anything here. I'm sorry I put you out of the job, but here, I'll pay you to go to Mars, or I'll pay you to do this, like, come live in my world. Ugh, like, we got to be careful with that too. You know what I'm saying? Like, like that is the opposite of like freedom. It's like, here's the carrot. So, it almost has to be a true, like, it has to be done in a way so that the person has true freedom. Like, it's like, here's 50,000 a year. Do whatever the hell you want with it. Literally live your life the way you want it to. By the way, you have 8 hours or 12 hours of your day back because you don't have to do that job. It would have to be sort of around that mechanism. If there's some sort of like strings attached, like come live here at this place or do this job or go to this place. I'm sorry I did this, but I don't know, man. I feel like that's almost worse. That's almost like a worse outcome because you're like, because one could make the argument, well, you're on purpose doing this so you can pull a bunch of humans to do your bidding. You know what I'm saying? It gets weird.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. Okay, we're almost at the 2-hour mark. Any last thoughts from the crew before we wrap this sucker up?
No, it was a super awesome conversation. I think
Yeah, it was good.
this last half has been so fascinating.
Yeah, I absolutely love thinking about the future and what's possible if we can just get past our limited mindset based on analogy, reasoning by analogy, you know, thinking of what's possible in the past, and just think about like what's physically possible if we have robots everywhere, we got solar panels everywhere, we got batteries stored, you know, like we transform the world and we can send people to Mars and do all these crazy stuff. We just gotta believe, you know. I love thinking about that.
Yeah, likewise. I know that everyone says this already, Farzad, but yeah, just huge props to you for opening up this forum to be able to have this type of a discussion. I think that it does speak to the culture of Tesla that you came out of, that, you know, you value diversity in a way that you demonstrate by actions, not just words, like an invitation that we as just, you know, normal non-YouTube people can come on your channel and have a discussion and maybe potentially, as crazy as it might sound, provide value to the community. I had a blast. Like, there's one other person that I get to talk Tesla with, and we never get into these types of discussions because, like, he's maybe a quarter of the way as deep into it as I am. And so it's a lot of explaining things instead of actually opening up and like exploring new potential frontiers, because you're at a level where you can kind of bounce off of each other at the edge of, you know, kind of discovering what is true, what's real, what's possible. So yeah, I loved it. It was awesome.
Awesome.
Ditto.
That's very, very kind words, man. Thank you very much. That's literally exactly what I'm trying to do. Diversity of thought is super important, and getting getting some sort of platform or place where we can all play together for voices and ideas that perhaps don't have the ability, or like are, you know, like you said, like they're sort of isolated and they're not able to really flesh out their thoughts out loud. I think it's super valuable, and that's truly how you solve problems. Like, you need to have these discussions to solve problems. We're probably not going to get paid for it, you know, once these people put it in place. But at the same time, who cares? Like, it's about making the future better. And if this is helping in any way, I love it. I want to thank you guys so much for supporting the channel and obviously being part of these conversations. It's super rewarding for me because I get to be closer to the folks that value what I do, and at the same time, I think we're coming together to truly and sort of in the same mantra that Tesla and other companies are trying to do in that matter, trying to make the future better. This is just my small way to try to make that happen, and giving platform to those that want to also potentially want to be part of that journey as well. So thank you guys very much for being part of this panel. And for whoever else that's out there that would like to join the panels, these are my Patreon and channel supporters. So if you ever want to be in these panels, consider joining. If not, that's okay too. Definitely use the comments to throw out your ideas. You know, there's what's been really cool about the previous videos that I saw you, Rodman, in the comments. I believe there were other people from the other panel as well that were in the comments, driving the conversation as well and giving their 2 cents. So if you want to be part of the conversation as well, but perhaps not on video, go in the comments section. We're going to be very active in that, and I read every single comment as well. So I'm always very interested to see what people are saying. So thank you guys very much. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next week. We have another one ready for next week, and appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. We'll see you around.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Awesome. Good job, guys. That was awesome. That second half was insane. So good.
Dude.
So good.
Yeah,
it was
so good.
So the question was, how did this come as an inspiration for me to do it? I'll put this like a bonus at the end, like a little bonus content, whatever. I was afraid. I'm always afraid of like bubbles, like I like just entrapping my thought under something. Okay. And then my thought process was, okay, I have this channel, and then all I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out what I'm thinking about, and I'm trying to convey it out to people. And then I have interviews with people that are within the same sort of thing that I'm doing, and I'm asking them questions, and they're giving me answers, and I'm trying to learn through them. But then I'm like, okay, but there's this entire like millions people community that are formulating their own thoughts, are thinking about things in their own way. A lot of them are not in America, and a lot of the things that we talk about are usually US centric too, right? So there's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of gaps in my knowledge, and there's also a lot of gaps in the conversation, I feel like. Just because somebody's involved in the Tesla community and doesn't have a YouTube doesn't mean that their thoughts and their thought process and how they think about things, it should be somehow like hidden. Like we should bring that to light. And I'm thinking, okay, so if I'm starting to build out because my Patreon initially, what I did and my thing was like, literally my thought process was, I don't expect to get paid for any of this, but if you really do feel like you want to chip in a couple bucks because this is truly valuable for you, go for it. Like I super appreciate that. And then as that was happening, I started seeing some of the stuff that was happening on Discord. Like, okay, cool. So like, it looks like we're building a community here. It's pretty small. We have a small community, but there's going to be like-minded individuals, and the people that are in that Discord have really interesting ideas. So like, why not just bring everybody together and let's have a conversation? Like, of course, people are going to be camera shy. People might not have the best equipment in the world. But like in the end, with YouTube or anything, like content is the thing that matters the most. People are going to watch things that they find useful and valuable. And I feel like giving a platform for people to be able to bring those forward is a net positive to move the conversation forward. And there's also this other thing too that tends to happen in the community, especially on YouTube. And the thing that I'm trying to avoid the most by far is that I don't want to like fall into this like sort of like, well, at the end you're going to run out of things to talk about, so all you're going to do is cover the news, right? Like I don't want to do that. I'm trying really freaking hard to do that. Yeah, sometimes I'll talk about what's happening in the news, but like my main thing is like, how can I continually move the conversation forward? Like we need to move it forward. We can't just like react to things. And there's a lot of value in that. I'm not saying like the stuff that Rob and Dave and all these other people do is not valuable. It's extremely valuable. And Dave especially, he brings in like experts and stuff and he talks about it. And he has a very unique viewpoint. SMR has his own thing. Everybody's great. But my thing is, if I really want to take this actually seriously and I want to bring a lot of value to the community, I need to move the conversation forward. And in my opinion, the best way to do that is to essentially leverage the community to do that, because you guys are the ones that are not just like the YouTube creators. Literally everybody is consuming, thinking, and then trying to apply it. But we don't have the luxury sometimes of being able to apply it, because like you guys said, you can't really think through these things with other people because we're all in these little bubbles. We're all like isolated, So this is my attempt to bring everything. It's trying to leverage the Tesla community brain power to try and help the Tesla community move things forward and think about things in a forward-looking manner, and trying to get ahead of things or be prepared for things that may happen that might catch people off guard. Like the politics thing that we're talking about, the vandalism stuff, like these are extremely important things that are going to dramatically shift the conversation on Tesla. And if this forum is able to give people a heads up that this is coming, as an example, if we think it's going to happen, that's incredibly valuable, because at least you have that in your head and you know what to expect if it were to come. And if it does happen, then you're like, okay, so the thought process that I took to get there worked, so I can trust my gut and my thought process to help me predict things that will happen in the future potentially, and emotionally prepare me and potentially prepare me from an investment perspective to be ready for this event to happen, right? So that's how I think about these things, and having these conversations ultimately I think are the best way to equip us with the knowledge to handle those situations. Super long answer, but that's why I'm doing this. I hope that helps.
That's great.
Yeah, I hope that helps. Yeah.
That resonates with me actually, because when I first joined the Discord, I was like, I wanted to talk about Optimus. Like you had a conversation, you had one, like kind of the ones where you are online and you're just taking, like chats, right? And I was like, but I'm like thinking about Optimus and like some of the things we were talking about today. I'm like, this is going to change the economy. And then I finally was like, okay, I got to get on Discord. And then like I put out a huge blurb about like my thoughts on it. And then it kind of ended. I mean, it sort of went somewhere, but like, it's not the same as like sitting, talking to you 3, and then like face to face and like brainstorming in real time. Yeah.
Right.
It's amazing.
Right. Great. Awesome. That makes me very happy. Awesome, guys.